My name is Daniella Paulis. I'm a media artist, and in this talk, I'm presenting my research at the intersection of radio astronomy and neuroscience that I've been developing over the past 11 years, focusing in particular on my ongoing project Cogito in Space. As an artist, I've been developing an increasingly greater insight into the technologies I use. I trained as a radio telescope operator at the Dwingelo Radio Telescope in the Netherlands, and I became a licensed radio operator. I started working with radio technologies in 2009 when I began using the moon bounce technology. The moon bounce technology was developed by the US Navy after the Second World War as an espionage tool, and it allows to send and receive radio signals from and to several stations on Earth, using the moon as a natural satellite. Traditionally, the moon bounce technology is used to send and receive sound and voice signals. In 2009, I developed an innovative application of the moon bounce technology in amateur radio that I called visual moon bounce. This allows sending and receiving images via the moon, symbolically using radio waves as light waves. I used the visual moon bounce technology in several artworks, including Optics, a live performance between the Earth and the moon, during which images submitted by the audience are sent to the moon and back in real time, using 2 or more radio antennas. The performance is usually streamed live on the internet from the cabin of the Dwingelo Radio Telescope and can be viewed from all over the world. The image that I consider symbolic of the visual moon bounce technology is the family portrait left on the surface of the moon by astronaut Charles Duke in 1972. The image is most likely bleached out by now because of the radiation of the sun. In 2015, I collaborated with Charles Duke, who sent me the scanned copy of the family portrait, and I reflected it off the surface of the moon. Working alongside astronomers over the years, I started questioning the cultural value of images relayed back to Earth by space probes from distant planets and other celestial objects. This image of the first hole drilled on the surface of Mars in 2013 is especially interesting to me for its sharp realism. The photo portrays in great details the Martian soil and sunlight. The clarity of the scene is symbolic of what I call the problem of dualism in contemporary cosmology, meaning that the fruition of these highly detailed images might prompt in the viewer an intuitive sensory response of embodiment, as if looking at images of familiar earthly landscapes, imagining to directly experience the sunlight, the texture, and the smell of the Martian sand. Yet the knowledge we acquire from these images remains abstract, as we might not be able in our lifetime to directly experience these eerie-looking landscapes. In the meantime, radio waves allow us to travel into space with our minds, much further and faster than our senses. A recent article in The Guardian also argues that images of cosmological objects produced by the Hubble Space Telescope have a greater cultural impact than any visual art produced in our time. This line of thinking led me to Cogito in Space that I developed between 2013 and 2018. Cogito in Space consists in transmitting into space the brain activity of a participant while she is viewing a video in virtual reality showing experimental footage of the Earth seen from space. The title of the project links to the ongoing problem of dualism of mind and body initiated with René Descartes. The project is in international collaboration with a team of neuroscientists, radio operators, and a filmmaker. The title Cogito in Space suggests the expansion of the concept cogito as conceived in an era where notions of human form and movement were guided by anthropocentrism and framed within the Euclidean space into the contemporary understanding of relativity and cosmological phenomena. Contemporary physics challenge the anthropocentric view and assert that space and time are not absolutes that extend equally throughout the universe. In the theory of relativity, in fact, space and time differ according to the movement of the observer. The virtual astronaut in Cogito in Space starts her journey within the Cartesian mind, localized in the brain and accurately measured through electrical signals, reaching for interstellar space where spatio-temporal references blur and eventually fade into the unknown, like the radio signal carrying the thoughts. The possibility of transmitting brainwaves into space to attempt communicating with an extraterrestrial intelligence has been explored by Polish novelist Stanislaw Lem in Solaris in 1961 and in the eponymous film by Andrei Tarkovsky in 1972. The idea of sending brainwaves into space has also been explored by Carl Sagan in 1977. Sagan included a 1-minute audio recording of brain activity in the Golden Record. The brain activity of science writer Anne Droyan was recorded over 1 hour and compressed into a 1-minute sound recording, using the now old-fashioned system of ink needle on paper. For the project, I've been delving into some pivotal works in philosophy of mind, including Mind and Cosmos by Thomas Nagel. In his book, he addresses the enigma of the human ambition to explore beyond its own limits. Isn't it sufficient to try to understand ourselves from within, which is hard enough? Yet the ambition appears to be irresistible, as if we cannot legitimately proceed in life just from the point of view that we naturally occupy in the world, but must encompass ourselves in a larger worldview. And to succeed, that larger worldview must encompass itself. Another field of research to be referenced in relation to the project is the extended mind thesis that was suggested to me by philosopher Chelsea Haramia. The extended mind thesis, conceived by philosophers Andy Clark and David Chalmers in 1998, in philosophy of mind, the extended mind thesis says that the mind does not exclusively reside in the brain or even the body, but extends into the physical world. From the start of the project in 2013, I've been having conversations with Frank White, author of The Overview Effect, Space Exploration and Human Evolution, a book that describes the cognitive shift happening in the mind of the astronauts and cosmonauts after witnessing the sight of the Earth from space. This cognitive shift could be described as an increased awareness of the interconnectivity of all systems on our planet. Cogito in Space has been devised to take place inside the cabin of the Dwingelo radio telescope in the Netherlands. During the work in progress, lasted almost 2 years, we conducted several tests with the neuroscientists and the radio operators, with the intention of converting the electrical signal recorded from the entire skull by 32 electrodes into a mono sound that could be transmitted into space using the antenna of the Dwingelo radio telescope, while the subject is viewing the film in virtual reality for 9 minutes. The neuroscientists successfully addressed these challenges by developing an innovative protocol that we called the interstellar code that manages to convert the signal from the 32 electrodes into a sound that can be transmitted into space in real time, while retaining the spatio-temporal information of the brain over a long distance. For Cogito in Space, the neuroscientists and I focused on recording spontaneous cognition from the entire brain, also called stream of consciousness. The term stream of consciousness was coined by philosopher and psychologist William James in The Principle of Psychology in 1890. Consciousness, then, does not appear to itself as chopped up in bits. It is nothing joined, it flows. A river or a stream are the metaphors by which it is most naturally described. In talking of it hereafter, let's call it the stream of thoughts, consciousness, or subjective life. Here are some images from the work in progress, during which we had the opportunity to work and bond as a group in a relaxed and meditative mode, using the facilities adjacent to the radio telescope that became our studio. And here are some images created for the video in collaboration with filmmaker Sandro Bocci. The film in virtual reality shows an abstract narrative of the evolution of the cosmos from the formation of galaxies and planets. Suddenly, towards the end of the video, the curvature of a blue planet appears. Also, the sight of Martian dunes soaked in an ultramarine blue aims to suggest the oceanic feeling. The oceanic feeling was first suggested by art historian Romain Rolland in his letter to Sigmund Freud, in reference to mysticism in art. Rolland defines the oceanic feeling as the feeling of the eternal, which can very well not be eternal, but simply without perceptible limits and like oceanic, as it were. At the end of the film, finally the image of the entire Earth appears. The image is the iconic blue marble fading into the back of the retina and into the subjective memory of the viewer, suggesting we only know the site of our planet from photographs. The main event of Cogito in Space was hosted at the Dwingle Radio Telescope and at the Astron Auditorium in November 2018, when Frank White gave a talk about the overview effect, followed by a walk in the natural park surrounding the facilities. The walk was informed by notions of big history, a relatively new field of research encompassing natural and social sciences in retracing the history of humanity. After the walk, we hosted 2 performances with a live transmission of brain activity into space. During the transmission, we kept the antenna still to allow the radio waves to spread across the sky. We intentionally avoided targeting a celestial object in order to minimize chances of detection by a potential extraterrestrial intelligence. Michael Sanders, the radio operator collaborating in the project, visualized the brain activity of the participants recorded on that day into this spectrogram. Interestingly, the brain activity shows some sudden changes throughout the spectrogram in relation to the images shown in the virtual reality film. One of these changes corresponds to the moment in which the curvature of the Earth appears. For more information about the project, please visit the website cogitoinspace.org. Thank you for the attention.